Good evening. Thanks for joining me this Tuesday on 7Edition. I'm Preeta Manivanan and these are tonight's top stories. 18-year-olds can contest in elections but cannot vote. Former CCM chief to be hauled tomorrow over several corruption cases. And violence grips Hong Kong as China marks National Day with military might. We'll start off with this update. November 16th has been set as the polling date for the Tanjung Piai by-election with a 14-day campaign period. The Election Commission EC today also fixed November 2nd as nomination day, while early voting would take place on November 12th.
Manakala sebanyak 28 buah pusat mengundi yang mengandungi kesemuanya 127 saluran akan digunakan untuk kemudahan pengundi. PRK ini dianggarkan memerlukan peruntungan sebanyak 2.67 juta.
The EC is also targeting a 70% voter turnout. In the 14th general election GE14, the total number of registered voters in the Tanjung Piai parliamentary constituency was 53,528. This is the 9th by-election since GE14, following the death of Tanjung Piai incumbent Datuk Dr. Mat Farid Mat Rafiq on September 21st. The 42-year-old deputy minister in the Prime Minister's department died due to complications stemming from a heart attack. The Tanjung Piai by-election will go down in history as the first election in which candidates as young as 18 will be able to contest. Dato' Azhar said this follows amendments to the federal constitution which have already been gazetted. However, according to him, their eligibility to contest will be determined by the returning officer on nomination day.
Mengenai sama ada diterima atau tidak calon yang berumur 18 tahun, itu adalah di bawah bidang kuasa pegawai pengurus pada hari penamaan calon. Bagi pihak SPA, kita sedang mengambil tindakan untuk berlibat urus secara bipartisan pada masa terdekat minggu ini.
Prior to the amendments, the minimum age to contest in elections was 21. Amendments to the Article 47 of the Federal Constitution pertaining to the minimum age to be able to contest in elections received the consent of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on September 4th and were gazetted on September 10th. However, voters aged 18 to 20 would not be able to vote in the Tanjung Piai by-election as the law to lower the voting age from 18 has not been gazetted. Meanwhile, MCA has raised questions over the dates set for the Tanjung Piai parliamentary by-election. Its president, Datuk Sri Dr. Wee Ka Siong, said the nomination and polling dates coincide with MCA and UMNO's annual general meeting. In his Facebook posting, Datuk Sri Wee said MCA's AGM had been set for November 2nd and 3rd, while UMNO's AGM had been scheduled for November 13th and 16th. Datuk Sri Wee questioned whether the clashing of dates were merely coincidence, but highlighted that the probability of it being one is very small. He, however, said MCA are already prepared to postpone their AGM should it clash with the nomination date. Moving on, the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission MACC has been given the nod from the Attorney General to charge former Companies Commission of Malaysia SSM Chief Executive Officer Dato' Zahra Abdul Wahab Fener tomorrow. Also to be hauled to court is his son Abdul Aziz Wan Ruslan. The MACC, in a statement today, said the duo will be jointly charged in connection with several corruption cases. Yesterday, they were summoned to the MACC headquarters in Putrajaya at 2 p.m. to wrap up the investigation on the cases. On January 9th this year, the anti-graft body seized 69 boxes of agreement documents from the SSM headquarters, believed to be related to a 500 million ringgit project undertaken by the SSM. The financial irregularities in the Armed Forces Fund Board (LTAT) will be made public. Defence Minister Muhammad Sabu gave this assurance after a low dividend of only 2% was announced yesterday by the board.
Dedah akan dibentangkan ke Parlimen, dedah kepada publik, akan dedah kepada publik semua.
He said inappropriate investments had been made by the LTAT, including the more than 500 million ringgit takeover of the Automated Enforcement System AES. The Defence Minister said if the funds had instead been deposited in a bank, it would have generated some 30 million ringgit in interest. LTAT will be announcing its plans this Friday, including corrections to its accounts, withdrawing inappropriate investments and reinvesting them elsewhere. The minister said LTAT is confident that in 3 years, the financial situation will improve once the mistakes are corrected. A former Finance Ministry officer at the Deputy Secretary General's office was charged with soliciting a 3 million ringgit bribe last year. 39-year-old Rohaya Sabot claimed trial when the charges were read out to her before Kuala Lumpur Sessions Court Judge Asman Ahmad. Rohaya allegedly solicited the bribe from an Allied Vantage International Group Limited representative on November 25, 2018. The money was an inducement for her to assist the company in winning a tender to buy a Malaysian government property at Gloucester Road in Hong Kong. Besides that, she was also charged with accepting 53,000 ringgit in stages from the company for the same project. Under the MACC Act, she faces up to 20 years imprisonment and a fine of not less than 5 times the sum of the gratification or 10,000 ringgit, whichever is higher. Rohaya was also slapped with 2 alternative charges for cheating the same person to hand over the money. The court allowed the bail at 30,000 ringgit and fixed October 29th for case remention. Now on to day 16th of Datuk Sri Najib Razak's 1MDB trial. The High Court was told today that 1MDB has accumulated a total of 30 billion ringgit in debt, which was fully borne by the Finance Ministry and the federal government. 1MDB's former CEO, Datuk Shahrul Azral Ibrahim Halmi, told the court this when replying to the question from Senior Deputy Public Prosecutor Datuk Sri Gopal Sriram. The 9th prosecution witness said these debts include 5 billion ringgit bonds issued by 1MDB that was guaranteed by the Finance Ministry and subsequent bonds totaling 3.5 billion US dollars jointly guaranteed by both the International Petroleum Investment Co, IPIC, and the Finance Ministry. Datuk Shahrul, who was the CEO from 2009 until his resignation in 2013, said that in the event of a default, 1MDB was required to make the payment first. The 49-year-old also revealed that IPIC would obtain the money from the Finance Ministry. Datuk Sri Najib faces 4 counts of using his position to obtain 2.3 billion ringgit in 1MDB funds and 21 counts of money laundering involving the same amount of money. The hearing before Justice Colin Lawrence Sequeira continues on Monday. The Police General Operations Force (PGA) seized more than 6.3 tons of kathum leaves at the Malaysian-Thai border. The leaves, worth more than 950,000 ringgit, were seized during the Ops Wawasan in Kedah and Perlis since August 27th. Police say a syndicate was believed to have placed the supply of kathum leaves in a wooded location close to the border before another party would smuggle it to Thailand. No arrest was made as the suspects have been able to escape the police every time they received a tip-off. Police are suspecting locals who are familiar with the area. The smuggling activities have increased as there is high demand for kathum leaves in Thailand, and the leaves are smuggled through several routes along the border, particularly in Padang Besar Perlis. The PGA will be increasing patrols along the 140-kilometer long stretch to stem out the smuggling activities. A cement lorry driver had a lucky escape after the vehicle he was driving was rammed by a train this afternoon. The 43-year-old driver had allegedly ignored instructions to stop by a guard manning the crossing as the train was passing through. Dramatic footage taken by a motorist behind a truck shows the guard furiously waving his flag, trying to warn the lorry driver not to make the crossing. As the train slammed into the lorry, the vehicle tips over, spilling cement on the train tracks. The driver was reportedly in a rush to get to a construction site. The train had damages on the front part of its engine, but luckily both drivers were unhurt. Police are now investigating the lorry driver under the Railway Act. All right, we'll take a short break. Coming up, Malaysian motorists unite to awake a dozing driver. Details next. Welcome back. Now let's hop on to Clickbait, where we take a look at what's trending and making the rounds in the cyber world today. Getting plenty of rest is important, as you'll never know when your body will force itself to snooze, especially in the most unwanted situations. Fortunately for this man in Penang, fellow motorists pulled their brakes and climbed out of their vehicles to wake up the sleeper who's been snoozing in his car, blocking traffic. Local celebrity Zizan Razak shared the story on his Instagram profile yesterday, with the clip raking in over 840,000 views. Zizan and his team were on their way to work on Sunday when they noticed the immobilized vehicle. Them, along with other road users, approached the BMW and noticed the driver was apparently fast asleep. Together, they shook the vehicle for the man to wake up, but it was to no avail. Then, one of them obtained a hammer and smashed the small window of the rear passenger door to unlock it. Finally, they successfully opened the driver's door. But even through all the ruckus, the man was still fast asleep. Oh boy, he must have been super exhausted. On to some foreign news. In Taiwan, rescuers and divers scrambled to find 6 people believed to be fishermen feared to be trapped in their boats on Tuesday morning after a bridge collapsed into a harbor in Yilan, leaving at least 12 people injured. The 9:30 a.m. accident crushed at least 3 fishing vessels and caused an oil tanker to catch fire. Dramatic CCTV images captured the moment the 140-meter-long single-arch Nanfangao Bridge came crashing down. Authorities have pressed soldiers into the rescue effort and set up an emergency center to run the operation. The reason for the bridge collapsing in a clear weather was not immediately apparent. The bridge was built in 1998 and the cause of the collapse is being investigated. Now, strife-torn Hong Kong on Tuesday marked China's 70th National Day with defiant day of grief protests and fresh clashes with police as thousands of pro-democracy activists ignored a ban on marches and took to the streets. The business hub went on a lockdown with beefed-up police presence overnight, suspension of some train services and multiple malls in the clash-prone areas declaring shut. Activists are determined to overshadow Beijing's festivities, using the anniversary to step up their nearly 4 months of protests, pushing for greater democratic freedom and police accountability. Smaller crowds rallied in a number of other districts, with clashes quickly breaking out, while throwing paper money or hell money during the demonstration, which is traditionally burnt when people die. In Tsuen Wan, masked protesters used umbrellas and sticks to beat riot officers after they made a series of arrests, where the latter retreated into a nearby town hall after they came under a barrage of projectiles. Earlier since midnight, tall water-filled barricades surrounded key government buildings, while the police blocked off certain roads in Wan Chai area to limit access to Bauhinia Square, where the flag-raising ceremony was held at 8 a.m. That, however, did not stop thousands of people streaming into Causeway Bay area for a march in the blistering heat. Overnight, the local media reported that the police arrested 5 men aged 17 to 31 for allegedly making petrol bombs. The territory's activities to mark National Day is a muted affair this year, with the fireworks show cancelled and the flag-raising ceremony to be viewed indoors. The protests came as lavish celebrations were taking place in Beijing, including a huge military parade through Tiananmen Square under the gaze of China's strongman President Xi Jinping. Among those watching the parade was embattled Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam, who has historically low approval ratings at home, as public anger boils over Beijing's increased control of the semi-autonomous city.
China put its growing military might on full display with a parade of new ballistic missiles, supersonic drones, and next-generation battlefield tanks that highlighted Beijing's accelerating race to match the firepower of its U.S. rival. The tightly choreographed procession across Tiananmen Square underscored a level of material and technological innovation. President Xi, who reviewed the troops before the parade marking 70 years of Communist Party rule, has pushed for the People's Liberation Army, PLA, to become a world-class military by mid-century. Some 15,000 PLA soldiers marched, while 580 pieces of military hardware rolled across the square and 160 aircraft buzzed overhead. According to Xinhua, 40% of the weaponry displayed at the parade was new, and all the armaments were made domestically.
Indonesian police said on Tuesday that more than 500 people were arrested after clashes in Jakarta against revisions of the country's criminal code. The controversial changes include the banning of premarital sex and the weakening of the anti-graft agency. The arrests came after a night of pitched street battles between riot police and stone-throwing protesters, many of them high school and university students. Local police said those detained will be questioned to determine whether or not they are students. Security forces geared up for more unrest Tuesday as some 575 lawmakers were sworn in the country's heavily barricaded Parliament building. Last week, at least 2 students died and hundreds more have been injured as a wave of unrest swept across the nation. Critics say the new bill, which includes dozens of legal changes, violates free speech and discriminates against religious minorities and women. Thanks for staying with us. The Malaysian Institute of Economic Research, MIER, is urging the government to reintroduce the Goods and Services Tax, GST, in the upcoming budget to safeguard the government revenue against oil price instability. Its chairman, Tan Sri Kamal Saleh, said 3% would be the ideal rate and hoped it could be implemented as soon as possible or by 2021. When met after the MOU signing ceremony between MIER and 7 collaborating partners under its Crouching Tiger plan, Tan Sri Kamal said there is a need for the government to look at a tax reform in order to get better revenue and move the country's economy.
So the last government took the initiative to implement GST, and it was when the oil price was going down, GST was what was keeping the government afloat. At a lower level, but with subsidy on the other hand and support for businesses, I think you can have a package that will win all around and keep the cost of living down.
The proposal was among the items on MIER's wish list that they hoped would be implemented for next year's federal budget. The GST was implemented by the previous Barisan Nasional Administration at a 6% rate and came into effect on April 1, 2015, up until its abolishment last year. Heading towards Budget 2020 that will be tabled by the Finance Minister on October 11th, Malaysia's consumer sentiment is expected to dwindle for the remainder of the year as the country continues to absorb the backwash of the external market volatility and domestic headwind. The Malaysian Retailers Association, MRA, is hoping the government will stimulate the economy to help the retail sector observe positive growth in the coming year.
Because lately the retail market is very soft. So we hope that the government can stimulate the economy by, building more infrastructure, create more foreign investors to come into Malaysia, so that every one of us has more money to spend.
The retail sector recorded a growth of an average 4.2% for the first 6 months this year, spurred by healthcare, beauty, unique and imported products, amongst others. MRA also hopes the government will continue to improve incentives and allowances for those who are classified in the B40 group in order to increase consumers' purchasing power. Bursa Malaysia settled higher today at the start of the fourth quarter, buoyed by a buying interest in the broader market while tracking the firmer opening in the U.S. equity futures market. The benchmark FBM KLCI rose 5.3 points to 1,589.44 from Monday's close of 1,583.91. Now on to stocks to watch. Axiata Berhad's share price weakness post-merger cancellation could be a buying opportunity backed by fundamental footing as regional operations grow more efficient. This plus whispers of potential mergers ex-Telenor abound as the group is open for considering earnings accretive and yield-generating ventures. Now next, to Gamuda Berhad's lower earnings contribution was seen in the construction division following cost rationalization in the MRT2 project by the government. This was partially offset by higher property earnings boosted by encouraging property sales in Vietnam. And last but not least, Sapura Energy Berhad posted narrower losses in the second quarter of the financial year 2020 compared to that of 2019 due to improvement in both engineering and construction as well as drilling divisions. Backed by a stronger order book going forward, Sapura is bidding for 34 billion ringgit worth of jobs worldwide, with more than half of its bid book coming from the Middle East and African region.